Hello, so today I would like to share with you some things that happened in our week last week. It was a very exciting week. One big thing that happened was I got a book published. So I'm going to share a little bit the story, how that came to be published, because it was quite a long journey from writing the book to publishing it, but I had some quite neat answers to prayer. So I'm going to share those because I always find it encouraging to hear answers to prayer and how God has provided. Also, I learned a way to publish which I'd never heard of before, and so I'm going to share that as well in case there's anybody else who watches this who may also be looking for a way to publish a book. Also, our new kitchen came, so that was exciting. Would you like to see what it looks like? Does that look like a kitchen to you? Well, it will look amazing when it's finished. Another thing that happened was Lydia's 6th birthday. So I'm going to show you a little bit of her birthday at the end of the video, and I'll show you what presents I brought her to, or what presents she got. And the reason I share that is because I don't like shopping for presents. I like giving presents, but I always find it difficult to know what to buy. I don't like choices and decisions, having to decide what to buy, but I also find it hard to know what is a good present. And I've sometimes gotten good ideas just from seeing what other people have given their children. So that's why I share things like that. And that's why I share things that we've been doing with my children, is that I might give somebody else ideas, just as I get ideas from other people. So first I'll share the story of how I came to get my book published. Now, the book that I published was a story about our journey with Lydia. So 6 years ago, Lydia was born. She had Down syndrome and heart complications, and her first year she was in hospital like a good half of the year, and it was very difficult. And even when things got back to normal, it was still difficult because of her Down syndrome. She just had a lot of different complications, and it was a big adjusting to having a child with special needs. But I learned so much through that first year, and after that first year as well, that I wanted to share the story and share how God helped us and the lessons we learned through it. And so, over the years I've typed out different memories and things that I wanted to remember. But in the beginning it was hard to write it because it had happened so soon that I kind of ended up in tears every time, so it kind of brought all the memories and things back. But last year I had the idea again to do it, and so I prayed a lot about it, because writing a book is a big thing and trying to get it published is another big thing, and it's not the kind of thing I would want to do unless I knew for sure God wanted me to do it. So it's a lot of work to go to if you're just doing it for fun. So I prayed a lot about it, and I believe that God did make it clear that I was to go forward and to do it. So I started to work really hard at typing it out, and there were times that I got stuck and I couldn't remember it clear enough. And I did share a lot of updates on Facebook, so I kind of went back and looked for those updates, but I would end up scrolling for ages trying to get back to 6 years ago. But so I kind of got stuck, but then I found a way that you can just look right back to what year and what month, rather than having to scroll for ages. So that was really helpful. But I also needed time to do it, because I would kind of, I'd have an hour here or an hour there, and I'd be all focused on it, and then you'd have to stop and do something else. And so I prayed to God and said, if you want me to write this book, I need time to focus on it. And I actually read a book by Ray Comfort, and he said, he was sharing about how a book he wrote, how for 3 days he worked, day and night getting it done. And I thought, if only I could have, 3 days just completely focusing on it. Well, not very long after, my mum messaged me and asked if she could take the children for the holidays. And I thought, oh wow. And I thought, but surely she won't want Lydia, because Lydia is a lot more difficult. So I asked her, I said, you don't mean Lydia too, do you? And she said, well, yeah, we'd like to have her as well. So since I prayed about it, I said yes. Usually I would feel bad letting somebody take Lydia just because she has a lot more work, and you got to keep an eye on her, and she gets into mischief and all that. But since I had specifically prayed for time, and now I had an offer for somebody to take my children for a whole week, I said yes. So that week, the weekend before and the weekend after, Johan planned a little holiday for us. So we went away for both the weekends. But during the week, when Johan was at work for about 3.5 days, I was able to really focus on it and get it all typed out. So that was a really neat answer to prayer. And but once I'd written it out, I didn't really know what to do next, and Johan actually started to look things up on the computer, look for ways to get published or edited. And then the next thing I knew, I got an envelope in the mail, an anonymous envelope with $1,000 cash in it. First I thought, what on earth am I going to do with that? It was addressed to me. And then I thought, oh, my book. So Johan actually started looking for editors. He thought the first thing I should do was to get it edited. So he found a Christian editor online from the States. And so we contacted them, and they edited my whole book, and it cost about $1,000. So that was really neat. That was, everything that I was praying for kind of happened so quick. But then the last thing I needed to do was to publish it. And because the other things happened quick, I kind of just expected that to happen quick as well. Now, I published one book before, which is called Bible Devotions for Teen Girls, and that time I paid a lot of money to get it published. I paid over $1,000 to publish it. So this time around, I thought there are only two ways you could publish it, or either to do it like how I did last time and to pay a lot of money, or to try to find a publisher who wants to publish my book, and who would pay me for it. So I was thinking about what to do. Now, we did have savings that we could use. It wasn't like we didn't have any money that we could use for the book. But around the same time, my husband had stopped working one day of the week. So he'd started working less hours. Now, this might sound negative, but it was actually a big answer to prayer. For a long time, we've been praying that he would be able to work less hours so that he could focus on other things like his ministry and other things like that. And I'd actually given up praying. I thought the answer was no. And then just one day, like years later, out of the blue, something happened. And through that, he was able to work one less day and still keep the same job. So that was a really neat answer to prayer. But when your husband has just started working less hours, you don't want to ask him if we can use our savings to publish a book. And also, this was something that God had put on my heart, not necessarily Johan's heart, to write this book. And so I didn't want to go ask him if we could use our savings to publish my book, because it was a lot of money. So since I just got money in the mail, I just started praying for more money to publish the book. And so first, I think one of the first things I did was to contact the publisher of my other book and ask what it would cost to publish this new book. And they gave me a price, and they said for, I think it was the month of November, there was a special and it would be the certain price. Now, I already had a couple of $100 saved up that I could use for that. And so I needed about $700 more to publish it this way. So I started praying for it $700. And one morning I saw that somebody had emailed Johan saying, we would like to give you a money gift. Now, they knew that he was working less hours now, and so they wanted to give us a money gift. And half of it was for us personally, and the other half was for the Little Haven, which is a ministry my husband has. So I saw this email, and I thought, oh, well, it's me that's praying for money, and here somebody's given Johan money. Anyway, I asked Johan how much money he'd been given, and it was $700, the exact amount that I'd been praying for. Now, usually I would be happy when somebody gives us money, or when somebody gives Johan money for his ministry, but since I'd been praying for it, it really seemed unfair. And I had two bad thoughts go through my mind. One is, that's mean. Here I'm asking for money and God gives it to my husband instead. And the other bad thought was, God made a mistake. He thought it was Johan praying for the money, not me. So I had those two thoughts go through my mind, but then thankfully a song came into my mind which rebuked both those thoughts. And the song said, God is too wise to be mistaken. God is too good to be unkind. When you don't understand, when you can't see his plan, when you can't trace his hand, trust his heart. Now, I think I've got it written down in my journal. I think it was around the same time that I listened to a talk by Priscilla Shirer, which is called When It Feels Like God is Doing Nothing. And the title of it got my attention because here I was praying for something and it seemed like God was doing nothing because he hadn't answered my prayer. And so I listened to that video, and she told a story which for me was really, really helpful. She told a story of when she was talking to one of her children, and they were talking about what he wanted to do when he grew up. And he said, I want to do what you do. And she felt very flattered that, her son would want to do what she does, until she asked him, what do I do? And he said, you do nothing. And she was a bit shocked. It was the last thing she was expecting. And she said, but, I do the cooking and the cleaning, and, I do all those jobs. And he said, oh yeah, every mother does that. And she said, because she's an author, she said, well, when I'm sitting on the computer, I'm writing books. And he goes, oh, you just sit there on the computer like that, doing nothing. And actually, I think it was the next day, she found out that one of her books had become a bestseller. So her son thought she was doing nothing, and yet she was writing bestseller books. And to her, it was a picture that sometimes it seems to us that God's doing nothing because we can't see what he's doing, and yet he is working, we just can't see it. So for me, that was a really big encouragement. And she also said that same chorus of the song about God is too good to be mistaken. So it kind of confirmed that to me again. And also what I did learn through that, it was a sore spot for a long time. But I saw that God could have so easily given me the money if he had thought I needed it. If that was the right way and he thought I needed the money, he could have provided it so easily. So the fact that the exact amount was given to Johan kind of showed me that it's nothing for God to give us what we need if he thinks we need it. So the end of the month came and I still didn't have money to publish it that way. So I started to look for other options. I contacted a few publishers that I never heard back from. So I had two ideas of what I could do. One, I found a Christian publisher that you could submit your book to, because a lot of them you can't even do that without an agent, I think. So I found one that I could send my book to, and another place, there's a website called Christian Proposals, which you can make a proposal for your book and you pay about $150 for 6 months. You stick it on there, and that's where publishers look to find books. So a lot of the well-known publishers sometimes find books on that site. So it's another way that you can get people to look at publishing your book without having to, send it to them. So I asked John what he thought, and he thought I should try the Christian publisher. So I sent it to them, and I had to fill out all these forms, like to make a CV and a summary and all those types of things. So I filled that out, I sent it off, and I had to wait about 3 months. So when they got back to me, they said no, they didn't accept it. So then I had to look for another option, and I knew they probably wouldn't, because I don't think it's the type of book that they sell a lot of. So anyway, then I had to choose what else I was going to do. So then I thought I would try this other option, the Christian book proposals. So I had to fill out those forms and put my book on there. But at some point, I think it was back in March. So I think it was actually before I put it on the Christian book proposals, I listened to a sermon which was really helpful to me. So for me, I'm very impatient and I like instant things, and I don't like wasting my time. So trying to figure out how to publish a book kind of sometimes felt like a waste of time. So you could spend hours, filling out forms, and then they say no, or you can spend months waiting to hear back from a publisher just to say no, we're not going to do it. So it felt like a waste of time, and I felt like I was going around in circles. So anyway, I listened to a sermon by Scott Pauley called When the Lord Leads You in Circles. Now, unfortunately, I can't find this video on YouTube anymore. I think it's been made private, which I don't know why, but it was a really helpful sermon to me. And it was about Jericho, how the Israelites had to go around Jericho for 6-7 days, and on the last day, the walls fell down. And yet, in that whole week before, they had to go around and around and around in circles. And he said how sometimes we feel like we're going around and around in circles just like the Israelites. And yet it's not a waste of time if we're doing what God is telling us to do. And that sometimes God does lead us around in circles, and yet it's to teach us to trust Him. It's to teach us important lessons. And I actually wrote down the different points from a sermon. And the first one was a lesson of sight, how they saw the same path every day, and yet God said to them, "See, I've given into your hand Jericho." And yet they couldn't see. It didn't look like they were any closer to conquering Jericho, and how we need to have eyes of faith to trust God. The second one was a lesson of strength and how it was such a strange battle plan. And, we want to rest on our own eyes, but we have to trust God and trust His strength. And it's not our strength the Lord needs, it's His strength that we need. And the third lesson was a lesson of silence or stillness, how they weren't allowed to talk or make any noise when they were going around Jericho. And the pastor said, God gets you still and quiet so that you can hear Him. How sometimes we need to, just be quiet and trust God. And the fourth lesson was the lesson of steps. And he said the will of God is done one step at a time, and how they just had to keep taking the next step, going around Jericho, and how we need to just keep taking the next step. And he said about how Christopher Columbus, a lot of entries in his journal just said we sailed on. So a lot of the time that he was sailing around the world, he was just sailing on and on and on. And his pastor said you don't step foot on the new world every day. So big things don't happen every day. A lot of the time we just have to keep going on and taking the next step. And then the last fifth lesson was the lesson of the shout. And it said only those who learn to be silent got to shout. And they just had to keep going around Jericho until that last day. And then even when they had to shout, it would have still felt like they were no closer to Jericho. Like, it wasn't until after they shouted that the walls fell down. And so to me that was a real encouragement, because I felt like I was going around in circles, not getting anywhere. And that sermon really encouraged me to trust God and to just keep taking the next step, and that it wasn't a waste of time, even though it really felt like it. So anyway, I put my book on the Christian proposals, and I've been praying, I think, just about every day that God would make a way to publish it, because I knew that there's a big chance that nobody would want my book on this site as well. So I kept on praying. And then just a few weeks ago, I got a letter from somebody who knew about my book, and they asked me something about it, like, has your book been published yet, or something like that. And it made me upset, because it reminded me that my book still hasn't been published. It's been nearly a year now, and I didn't know how to answer them when I write them back. And so I felt a little bit frustrated and upset, and I prayed to God, how am I supposed to answer them, because my book's still not published. And a few days later, I was watching a YouTube video. There's a YouTube channel that I follow, and the lady on there had just gotten her book published. So my first thought was, well, that's not fair, because I'm still trying to publish my book. But anyway, I looked up how she had done it, and she'd done it on Amazon. And I'd never heard of, well, I think once I did hear of publishing on Amazon, but I didn't know what they were talking about, so I hadn't thought anything of it. But I looked into it, and I saw that to publish on Amazon, you don't need money. So, it didn't cost anything, but they publish, I think, just about any book. Like, Amazon is actually a publisher. So you can publish your book on there, and you don't have to pay for it. You just, when people buy books, they pay for it, and they just print it out then and send it to them. So there's no cost. You don't need to try to find a publisher. I thought there was only, one of two options, but there was also a third option, which I didn't know about. So I was really excited that I'd found a way to do it, and I still wasn't sure if this was the right way or not, but since I heard about it, I thought I might as well look into it, because my time was nearly up on the Christian book proposal site. So I was very excited, but then I started to do it, and I found it very hard and frustrating, because, well, I didn't know how to do it. I'd never done it before, and it wasn't quite as easy as what it seemed. But anyway, I had found an article on how to publish your book on Amazon, so I was kind of going through the different steps. So anyway, I uploaded my book on there, and my book has all been edited. But when I put it on there, the formatting got all strange, like there'd be big gaps in pages, and you couldn't fix it once it was uploaded on there, and so I really didn't know how to fix it and to get it right. So for me that was really frustrating, because I didn't know how to change it and to make it right when it uploaded on the Amazon. So I went back to that article, and I found on there that there's something you can download, which you can kind of get your book right before putting it on Amazon. And so I downloaded that, and then I uploaded my book on that. And once you uploaded it from that onto the Amazon, then it stayed the same. So through that, I was able to get it on there and for it to look right. But then you have to design your own cover on there. When on Amazon, you kind of have to figure out everything for yourself. So that was really hard. I would rather just pay somebody to do it for me. I'm not a designer, and I don't like trying to figure out things like that. And so I was trying to make my cover, and you've got to figure out, what to write on the back and how to design the front. And so I figured out what to write on the back, but there were like big gaps in between words, and it just looked weird, and I didn't know how to fix it. And so for me, that was really frustrating. But anyway, I just kept going back and praying for God to help me, and I realized that if you got to the end of a sentence and pressed enter, then all the words would even out properly, so there wouldn't be big gaps in between words. So, and I also remember what Corrie ten Boom said, how she said her advice was to keep it simple, stupid. So I decided to just keep it as plain and simple as possible. And anyway, in the end, I figured it all out, and once I'd figured it all out, it would all happened very, very quick. So I actually haven't seen it in print yet. I've ordered copies, but it ended up being much easier than I thought. But in that time of feeling very frustrated, not being able to figure it out how to do it on Amazon, that was during lockdown, and one of my children was doing schoolwork at home, and she would get very frustrated. I found her hard because if something was a little bit hard, she'd get all frustrated and upset. But so I found her very difficult. But when I went back and was trying to figure out how to publish my book, I saw myself in her. I realized that I'm just the same. If something's really hard, I feel like it's impossible and I just can't do it. So it was quite eye-opening and humbling to see that I was just the same as her. I react the same way when something is really hard. So anyway, that's the story of how I got my book published, and I hope it is an encouragement to you to see how God answered my prayers and how He made a way. And also, if you're interested in writing a book, then maybe it will encourage you to know that there is a way that you can publish them without needing money and without needing to try to find a publisher. So one more tip I have, especially since it's the holidays now, it's the first day of the school holidays in New Zealand. One tip that I have is to make the most of motivation. So either this can apply to yourself or to your children, but in applying it to our children, when children are really motivated, they can do things really fast. So if they know they're going to be doing something fun and they have a job to do first, they usually do it really quick because they want to go and do the exciting thing. So there's a way you can use this. So if you're going to do something fun like going to the park or playing a game or doing some baking or whatever, to say, before we do this, we're going to go tidy up the lounge, or we're going to put away 10 things each, or we're going to go tidy up our room. Because if they're feeling motivated, they do it really quick. So I try to remember that if they're going to do something fun, say, first of all, we're going to do this job first, and they do it a lot quicker because they feel motivated. So that's a good tip for children, but it's also a good tip for yourself. If you know you're going to do something fun and you have to do something first, you usually do it a lot quicker and you're more motivated to do it because you want to go do the other thing. Whereas if you don't have that motivation, you can be a lot slower because you're not motivated. And also another way to make the most of motivation is if you feel motivated to do something, to make the most of that, to go and do it while you feel motivated, because there are a lot of times we don't feel motivated to do things and then we have to push ourselves to do it. Whereas if we do feel motivated, instead of waiting until another time, it's good to just go ahead and do it and make the most of the motivation while we have it.
Today is Lydia's birthday and she's at school, so we saved most of her presents for after school since we have a little bit more time. This is another easy cake idea. A butterfly, you just cut the cake down the middle, cut out like those sides there, which is in the middle when you've just cut it, and then turn them around like that, then decorate it. I think it's slightly lopsided, but I don't think Lydia will notice. Lydia got a card in the mail from Heart Kids with, I think, a balloon and a lollipop in there. And in the mail today she also got a parcel from Grandma. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lydia. Happy birthday to you. Blow it out. Can you blow? Here, now you help. Blow, Lyd, blow. Whoa, Hannah.
Yay! Lydia. Yay! Are we doing presents?
Do you want to eat some cake?
Okay. I'm hungry. One. Yeah. Mama. The board.
Wow.
Do you want me to get it out? Nah. She's trying to get it.
Yeah, break it.
It's hard to open. Boo.
Oh, that's a neat ball.
Why is it?
Do you like it?
Mom, look at this one.
It's a neat thing to do with
Like,
Lydia.
what's to do it?
What?
That was on the side. That one.
You can give her that one.
Mommy, I thought it was a Santa one. Like, that's a Christmas one. Wow.
Wow, that's nice.
But you look happy. Nipple.
Is that the best present? A lollipop? Yeah? Oh.
Me. Okay. I'm gonna make one. I have my slingshot. Yay!
Yay.
Daddy did it.